Arizona star wide receiver Tetairoa McMillan has been wide receiver one for the consensus time for the 2025 NFL Draft. But as of late, Texas star wide receiver Matthew Golden has been blazing up draft boards. We're going to talk about that conversation and rank our top 10 wide receivers coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I'm an offensive draft analyst over with Bleacher Report. That's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He is the director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with those LSU Tigers. And as always, guys, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydays. We have a fun show for you. Wide receiver one discussion. Tetairoa McMillan or Matthew Golden out of Texas. We'll get into that. Then we're going to rank the rest of our wide receivers 3 through 6. You see who falls into that bucket. And then we're going to close it out with wide receivers 7 through 10. Let's start off, Keith, with the opening topic here. Tetairoa McMillan has been the consensus wide receiver one since pretty much the summer. Right. Well, it was between him and Luther Burden. Right. And it's crazy how things have turned. It was him and Luther Burden as wide receiver one and wide receiver two. Then Luther Burden's season didn't go as well. Some of that of his own, most of it, I would kind of say Missouri's offense was just not good. Right. So then Tetairoa McMillan had kind of a stranglehold. He was at the top of the charts. But since the college football playoff, our guy Matthew Golden has been blazing up draft boards. Then he goes and runs a blazing 4.29 at the NFL scouting combine. I don't think he jumped. He didn't do 3-cone. He didn't run routes. He said, I'm going to go ahead and chuck the deuce, give it his 4.29, and then see me at Texas for my pro day. And I'm not mad at him for it, Keith, but is there a true conversation? Who is your wide receiver one? Is it T-Mac or is it Matthew Golden right now?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with this. There should be a true conversation about who is wide receiver one. That's how I feel. Who is my wide receiver one? I'm going to stay with T-Mac for the time being. But obviously the people that's been locked in with us from the very beginning, Matthew Golden is a guy that I've liked for a while, and people have known that, right? Since he transferred from Houston. I gave him a high second-round grade coming from Houston entering the season, right? And then even when he got to Texas, I was like, hey, he might be the better wide receiver out of him and Isaiah Bond. Let's pay attention to this, right? Obviously with both guys being transfers. And then Matthew Golden, what he was able to do this year. The reason why I'm saying this is because I kind of want to go against the notion of that I feel that because he ran a 4.29, I like him as a wide receiver now. That's not the case, right? I've always liked him. The 4.29 is a situation where I think that it's opened people's eyes, but I think if you really look at what he's done in his body of work throughout the year, you see a guy that can run detailed routes. You see he's a natural hands catcher. I think he can separate. I think he checks all the boxes. And to do that, DP, we had guys that have run like Xavier Worthy, right? Ran a 4.21, right? I think that's the record. He did that at 165, 170 pounds. Matthew Golden is 190 pounds. He's 6 foot 190. That's a good size for a wide receiver. And then now you add in a 4.29 plus the route running detail savviness. I think there's a real good case. Now, why is T-Mac still up there for me? Is because you can't forget T-Mac's body of work, right? Like in Arizona, for some reason, Arizona and Kansas, right? I think in the Big 12, that's probably the two most disappointing teams. Kansas turned it on late. Arizona had T-Mac plus their quarterback, right? Plus a decent running back, to where they should have performed better. But you look at T-Mac body of work over the last 2 years, I think that he's super talented. He's a big body. And what I put it towards is this. I like your Mike Evans comp for Tetairoa McMillan. But I go back to the draft of, and this is going to be my comp for Matthew Golden, right? I go back to the draft with Drake London and Garrett Wilson. I think it's exactly that situation all over again, because I think in that notion that some people thought that Garrett Wilson was wide receiver one, but the Atlanta Falcons wanted a big body wide receiver to pair up with Kyle Pitts. I think it's going to come down to dealer's choice as far as who they want to insert as wide receiver one. But I think that's a very good comp and situation as far as who is potentially the best wide receiver versus team need and fit. So I think my comp for Matthew Golden is Gary Wilson. I think they play very similar, and I really like that situation. But I think you go back to that draft, and I think that's how you kind of split the differences of. I don't think it's who goes first. I think it's a team need and team fit situation.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I love the Garrett Wilson. There hasn't been one that crossed my mind, but like I think the comp I put in my report was Santana Moss coming off of the combine and just kind of movement skills, the way you can motion him, give him the ball in space, and the speed, the route running, the toughness, the tough grabs that he makes, and especially for a guy that's he came in listed at 5'11", but he still makes those above the rim grabs that you don't expect those body types to make over defensive backs. I got you. I'm with you. I still have T-Mac as wide receiver one. And like I said, we're not going to be overreactionary because we've liked Matthew Golden the whole time. You introduced him to this podcast and to me. And when I got to his tape, I said, oh, yeah, this dude can play. And I think I had to his tape mid-season. And I was like, yeah, he's probably the best receiver on this team. And this is the guy they probably should funnel their passing attack through and set the tone with Matthew Golden.
Yeah, and that's the other part too, is that you look at the numbers. I think he still finished right under 1,000 yards, right? But if you look at the very beginning of the season, and let me just give people some type of insight into how these things go. That when you enter the season and what the potentially, and I don't want to speak for the Texas coaching staff, right? But what could have potentially happened is that we got Matthew Golden from University of Houston, and we got Isaiah Bond from University of Alabama, right? And so you come in, and I think Sark was familiar with Bond, right? From maybe they crossed paths at some point at Alabama when he was the OC, right? But you come in, you say Isaiah Bond, and he's our wide receiver one. So you can spend the first 3, 4, 5 weeks funneling an offense through that, right? And just how it was an epiphany for the draft community, it could have been an epiphany for the coaching staff to say, you know what? Let's take that risk at putting Matthew Golden at wide receiver one, right? And that's why there could be some tailoring and production, right? Especially like if you look at the beginning of the season, there were some games he went 4 targets, 2 receptions, and 25 yards. When you watch this guy's skill set, there's no way in heck he goes any game with just 4 targets, 2 receptions, and 25 yards, right? And then you add in, I don't remember DP, right? Quinn Ewers was hurt for a couple weeks, right? So you have a quarterback change and different things like that. All of those different things could explain why Matthew Golden may not have the 1,500 yards production because they all matter at the end of the day.
No, they do. And for me, Keith, I even go. So the thing I want to answer is the question I came up with, and I want to answer: is there a case? Because we've seen, I think Daniel Jeremiah dropped this to his top 50 big board, and I believe it was Dan Brugler, and they both had Matthew Golden as wide receiver one on their rankings. And is there a case for him to truly be wide receiver one for some? I said there is a case for it, and I think you go back to it's kind of revisionist history, hindsight, right? It's the Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors situation. We knew that Marvin Harrison Jr. was the bigger, stronger, more polished route runner, separated. We knew that Malik Neighbors was the dynamic, explosive, like run after catch, deep ball threat. Like he's a threat at any moment to take it the distance, right? But it was like, okay, well, what do you want? We knew that Arizona, like you said, like you talked about with Tetairoa McMillan in the Falcons with the Drake London thing. Well, the Cardinals needed the X receiver, so they went and got. Now we talked to him in this pod. We said we believe both of those guys would have fit well with Kyler Murray. With Kyler Murray's off-script playmaking, Malik Neighbors probably would have been a better fit for him because of the fact that Kyler Murray likes to break, contain, create chaotic plays, and Malik Neighbors being that quick twitch guy. I think that is why people are trying to, not saying that they don't believe Matthew Golden isn't wide receiver one, but it's kind of like, let me correct my wrong. Let me correct my wrong from last year because of the fact that we saw how much easier it was to get the ball to a Malik Neighbors than a big body route runner like a Marvin Harrison, right? Same way with Garrett Wilson. It's easier to get the ball to Garrett Wilson at times than it is to get the ball to Drake London because of the size difference and athletic profile. I think that's what is happening. And not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just not trying to correct. Like, it's been 1 year. Like, you know what I mean? And also, the freaking Cardinals were playing 13 personnel with just Marvin Harrison at times as the only receiver. He's going to get double teamed. You know what I mean? Like, let's get more guys on the field to spread some things out. But yeah, I look at it like that. I still have Matthew Golden as my wide receiver 2. I have Tetairoa McMillan as my wide receiver 1. But it is a legitimate conversation, and it's all about kind of what's your flavor? What do you need for your offense? If I need a true X, I'm not taking the Malik Neighbors or Matthew Golden if I need that big body guy. But if I need that Z receiver, that movement guy, I'm not taking Tetairoa McMillan, Drake London, or Marvin Harrison.
Yep, I agree 100% with DP. I think we're somewhat lockstep in that situation. I think we lockstep, right? But I can guarantee our listeners things about to go off the rails, right? We're about to rank wide receivers 3 through 10. The rest of the podcast, next segment, we're going 3 through 6. Coming up next.
This show is sponsored by Betterhelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session. But with BetterHelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. Guys, therapy isn't just for tough times. It's a great tool for learning coping skills and setting boundaries. Take it from me. I personally know what that means because I go to therapy too, and I've learned coping skills. I've learned how to set proper boundaries. Okay, it's helpful. Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Wide receiver, ranking the wide receivers 3 through 6. At number 3, Keith has Travis Hunter out of Colorado. At number 4, he has Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. At number 5, he has Jalen Noel from Iowa State. And at number 6, he has Luther Burton III from Missouri. For me, after Tetairoa McMillan and Matthew Golden, I didn't factor in Travis Hunter. That just seems like a headache. I don't even feel like doing it. I don't know what to do with the situation. So we all know he's in that bucket with Matthew Golden, that battle for wide receiver 2, possibly for wide receiver 1 with Tetairoa McMillan, if he's an actual wide receiver. But I took him out. And the wide receiver 3, I have Trey Harris from Ole Miss. I have Emeka Egbuka right behind him at wide receiver 4. And I have Luther Burton III at wide receiver 5. And I have Elic Ayomanor at wide receiver 6 from Stanford. Keith, I think we're not too far apart.
No, we're not. It's a couple guys. Trey Harris, right? That's one guy. You have him high, and then I don't have him on here at all. That's spoiler alert. But I want to talk. But we've had the Trey Harris conversation already, right? I want to talk about Elic Ayomanor because was this when I initially hear his name, right? It's obviously I know that we both had questions about his 40 time, and was his 40 time? I guess it was a good 40 times. I'm not saying is it good enough, but was it enough to get you to buy in to him being a top wide receiver?
Yeah, I think with him when he ran his 40, because I was high on him. I just wanted to see what that 40 time looked like. And on this podcast, if you're new to the show, we don't overvalue the 40 here at the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. It's just a data point that we factor in. Once I saw the 4.4, was it 4.44 or whatever, he dropped that like Jay-Z when he dropped that. I was like, okay, bet. Like you solidified yourself. He was already a top 5 to 6 guy for me because of the ball skills, the strength, the route running, the release package. Like he knew how to win one-on-one, and he was a guy that you could funnel the passing game to. And I think it's crazy. We talked about this. There's multiple guys that we just kind of wonder, what would you have looked like with a really good quarterback in college, right? What would Elic Ayomanor have looked like catching passes from Shador or if he was in Trey Harris's spot at Ole Miss with Jackson Dart in that Lane Kiffin offense, right? Or if he was a wide receiver 1 to 1B with Ryan Williams over at Alabama with Jalen Milroe, like how different would Jalen Milroe's season have gone if he had another big body guy that could really do a lot of different things? So I love his skill set. I just wanted to see, okay, what does that straight line speed look like? And that's what I think we talked about it after the combine. I need to know where he's going to play in terms of weight because I think he played close to the 215, 220. He came to the combine at 206, still looked like he was 212. So the 40 time solidified him for me. I love his game. I love everything he brings. This guy can play the X, the Z, the slot. He can move all over the offense. I think you can funnel. This is a guy I believe that could be a wide receiver 1, at worst a wide receiver 2.
Yeah, he is so difficult for me, DP. And I tweeted this out Friday, right? Him and Jalen Royals were guys that based off of their 40, I was like, I got to go back to the film, right? Because I didn't expect them to run that. And when I watched the film with Elick, and I'm taking my time because this is just a thought process that goes into scouting, and you're trying to figure it out, right? It's I don't see the vertical separation, right? And it's a head scratcher. And I'm like, are you doing it on purpose, not separating? Or what? Like, do you not believe in the quarterback to give you the football? Because 4.4 speed is plenty good enough for you to get vertical, right? And this is not for me. And I don't know if you feel the same way. It wasn't like one instance where he didn't separate. It was like multiple instances where I'm like, I don't know. Like, why aren't you doing this, right? But everything short to intermediate, I really liked and appreciated. So he was definitely a difficult, and it's going to be a difficult evaluation, right? Like, he's going to make you question a couple different things about your process and yours. Like he makes you reflect, right? You're gonna have to do some self-reflection with Elick Ayerman when watching him. But I look at the rest of this list, DP. Obviously, we both have Emeka in this situation, and I wanted to talk about Jalen Noel real quick. He was a guy that we didn't have a guy that did the Lad McConkey thing or the Tank Dell thing, but I think at the Senior Bowl he was closest to potentially doing that, right? As far as being a guy that, like, hey, people kind of worried about covering this guy. So I just wanted to give Jalen Noel a shout out because I think he has true upside as far as one being a dominant slot, but I think he can play some outside too because he has the foot quickness. And I remember one play at the Senior Bowl where he was able to kind of work back shoulder and adjust to the football and stuff that really showed me a lot of things.
No, 100%. I mean, his tape's good. We know he's a great route runner and separator. And it's like it's different, like how you talk about with like Elick. There's instances where I saw Elick get vertical, but we both had questions about it. You watch Jalen Noel run slot fades, and though he's out, like he's shot out of a cannon. Like almost every time, like where it's like once he's even, that old phrase, that old adage in football, once he's even, he's leaving. You see him pull away from guys time and time again vertically. And so when he ran a 4.39, I wasn't shocked by that at all, Keith.
No, me neither. And you know who he, like the layup of all layups for comps is Roman Wilson, right? Like that. That's the layup of all comps.
Yeah,
plays similar positions, similar body types, just everything, right? And he actually just may go higher just because of this wide receiver class. It's not as top heavy as when Roman went last year. And then obviously, Roman has kind of been out of sight, out of mind due to the injury with Pittsburgh and stuff. But I think that he can. And you know what? You get the feel, DP, is that the way he plays football, he's a immediate impact guy. Like you draft them and you can start them right away, right? Like if they'll use the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example, again, like if depending on what they do with George Pickens, but if you want another guy in there, if you feel that Jalen Noel can grasp the game quickly, and you can do some things with him and he'll be ready to roll week 1 of the NFL season. And that's not for everybody, right? Some guys you draft and you say, hey, this guy has tremendous upside. I like him. You may even take him in the first round because of his upside. For example, Quentin Johnston, right? You like what he can do, but you're like, hey, there's some developmental things that we want to work on with him here. I don't get the same vibe with Jalen Noel. The way he plays the game of football, I think he's locked and loaded and ready to go. But DP,
I agree with that. I want to say, Keith, I agree with that. I think for him, I think the thing with Jalen Noel, I think is going to be hard to overcome for certain teams. Is going to be the lack of like arm length, that wingspan. I think he might get pushed, like not because he has to play there. I think he's going to get pushed into the slot because he has sub 30-inch arms. They don't know if he's going to be able to make plays at the catch point. You rather have him in the slot with a two-way go. But the speed, the route running, the release package, like everything he brings, the separation and the explosiveness he brings. Yeah, man. I listen. I know the Patriots got a lot of fish to fry. To put stuff around and build that offense around Drake May. But if you go and grab like a Will Campbell or Armand Membo from Missouri, one of those tackles at 4. And you come in the second, if Jalen Noel falls to the third, if I'm the Patriots, I'm running that card up immediately because I'm getting a day one, I think, impact starter for this offense to you can get the ball to get it out of Drake May's hands and let him just feed that young man targets and let him be a 105 target rookie because he's got that, especially if you put him in the slot and kind of run the offense out of that. Like, yeah, especially getting the run game going. Maybe you pull a trade for T. Higgins. I don't know, but they got to figure some stuff out. I think that would be a really good landing spot for him.
Yeah, well, DP, let's do this, man. We're going to wrap this thing up with wide receivers 7 through 10. I told you that last segment, 3 through 6, was wild. We went different ways. We had our different reasons. We're going to have some fun. So I can guarantee you wide receivers 7 through 10 going to be a lot of fun. Y'all stay tuned. We're going to talk wide receivers 7 through 10 coming up next.
This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting, wondering, and worrying if you were going to get any money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a tax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only available in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Wide receiver 7 through 10 in our top 10 wide receiver rankings for the 2025 NFL Draft. Keith has Xavier Restrepo at 7. At number 8, he has Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State. At number 9, he has Jalen Royals out of Utah State. And at number 10, he has Savion Williams, big wide receiver out of TCU. At number 7, I have Jack Besh out of TCU. At number 8, I have Jalen Royals out of Utah State. At number 9, I have Isaiah Bond out of Texas. At number 10, I have Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. Keith, let's talk about Jaden Higgins, man.
DP, great minds think alike. That's exactly where I wanted to go with this.
Because this was a guy similar to I think we both similar to Eli Manor, and probably more so than Eli Manor. Jaden Higgins was a guy I was absolutely wondering, okay, what is he going to run? Right? We saw him in person at the Senior Bowl. We've watched the tape, came in at 6'4", 215, 33 in the 8th on the arm, over 9-inch hands, right? Then he busts a 4.47 with a 1.53 10-yard split, 39-inch vert, and 10.8 in the broad. And you're like, okay. Because when I watched him, the first thing I wrote down was separation. You don't see big body receivers that can separate the way he can do.
I agree.
So go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and I asked him about that, DP. I had a chance to talk to him at the Super Bowl, and I was like, man, you have really good quickness for a big guy. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I played basketball my entire life. He's like, so I have no problem with hitting a guy with a crossover at the line of scrimmage or at the top of the route. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, right? Another South Florida kid, right? And he was just like, yeah, I had to go to Iowa State, but we ball out anyway. So, it just and just to kind of provide some insight into, I guess, maybe potentially the athleticism, and you can see it, right? Because a lot of those basketball players are explosive vertical guys, right? And you can see the explosiveness in his release package and things like that.
And the crazy, just as for any young wide receivers listening to this, if you're in high school, play multiple sports. Like that,
100%.
Young high school players, period. Play multiple offensive line, D line, wrestle. Like play multiple sports, man.
My 7-year-old today, he has soccer practice at 5 o'clock. He has flag football practice at 6:30. Baby, we rocking and rolling. Gonna hydrate on the way to the next practice.
Baby, multiple sports, man. I'm telling you right now. And I think for, like you said, with Higgins, the separation, the short area quickness, all that was there. I wanted to see what he ran. And see him run sub 4.5, see him jump the way he did. Like I still gotta go through the tape to see if I see the 4.4 speed. But the leaping ability, the short area quickness, the strength, the catch, all of that is there. And this might be this might be a this or that situation that we bring back him or Tetairoa McMillan. Do you take T-Mac in the top 10, or do you wait to second round or day 2 to take a Jaden Higgins, similar height and everything, but T-Mac has shorter arms and a shorter wingspan? than Jaden Higgins does. But I think this guy worked himself. I think he kind of solidified himself as a day 2 pick. Where
Yeah,
I
100% did. I think he may have pushed himself like deep into the second round, right? Like teams feeling comfortable just being that size. The quickness and the foot speed vertical is hard to find, and I think for him it's gonna be a question of the names you think of are all Green Bay Packers wide receivers, right? The Marquez Valdes-Scantlins, the Allen Lazards, right? Or are you something different, right? Can you eventually become a number 1 wide receiver for an NFL franchise? I think that's going to be the conversation. DP, I want to talk about my guy Savion Williams, right? Because I think he went from me for like wide receiver 5 to wide receiver 10. All right, and talk about this. The catching ability situation, the sure hands, right? He has to improve on those situations. But I just want to apply context for our listeners. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say this again. If you like Deebo Samuel, view him as the 6'4", 230-pound version of Deebo Samuel and what you can get. And people are going to say that like this is such a high bar or like this is so rare to get to, but DP, I don't think people understand how do I say this, what he has provided or lack of, right? So since 2019, so that's 2019 through 2024, Deebo Samuel has had 1,000-yard season receiving. And then as far as rushing yards, right, because it's a big deal that he's, like he gets all of those, jet sweep things like that. He's touched over 300 yards one time since 2019. And so what I'm saying is that could Savion do that, right? And I think because people think that, you put it in context like, oh man, he has to be all pro and do like, no, like if this is very important to our offense, if I'm the 49ers and I just got rid of Deebo Samuel, I would be like, hey, I think I'm gonna go with this guy, right? And you know what Deebo Samuel was? It wasn't that he was a high level route runner and things like that, even coming out of South Carolina, but he did all of the nitty gritty things to be able to carve out a role. And I think Savion Williams can do the same thing as far carving out an important role inside of
100%. And to your point, Keith, because how many times have we seen, like, I think was it Treylon Burks, people compared to Deebo Samuel, and they tried it with Luther Burden. It's been multiple, Malachi Corley. It's been multiple receivers that people have tried to compare to Deebo Samuel, but the one thing that they lacked is the usage like Deebo Samuel. Savion Williams in 2024 ran the ball from a running back's alignment. He played wildcat quarterback running power between the tackles. He runs the jet sweeps, the jet pop pass, and the different things of that. They utilized him like a Deebo Samuel, Cordell Patterson type of player at TCU in 2024. So that's a parallel that is much easier to make than some of the guys that we tried to force it with as a draft community. Yeah. Like we tried to force Malachi Corley and Treylon Burks into the Deebo Samuel role. When now we actually have tape on Savion Williams being a big 6'4", 220. He came into the combine 6'4", 222. Like if he dropped down to like 215, he probably runs 4.45, 4.43. $1,000,000%. He probably runs that. But he stayed at 220 plus. He hit a 4.48. He didn't do any of the leaps and jumps. But yeah, I think that he's the type of guy, Keith, where like even though he didn't make my top 10, he just missed the cut. This is a guy's where, you know what, I can give him probably punt and kick return. I can give him 5 to 6 space. Like it's typical, the term satellite. We usually use that for running backs. Yep. He's a satellite receiver. Where it's like, you know what? I don't really need you to be this profound route runner. I just need you to get the ball to you in space and let you make plays. And you think about throwing a bubble screen, a swing pass to him with blockers out in front at 6'4", 225, 4.4 speed still. Like that's a nightmare for defensive backs to have to deal with. But then at the same time, if he does, like if he is, I've never spoken to the young man. I would love to. If he has the mindset the way he works on this game, and now he becomes a more well-rounded, more polished wide receiver, then it's like, okay, this is a complete headache. Like because now you kind of deal with, unlike with Deebo, is like okay, and then even with the way that Deebo won as a receiver, it was all inside routes, slants, mesh. in cuts, things of that nature. That's how Debo. Remember 2020? It was a 2023 season. They played Philly in Philly, and he caught that in cut at like 5 yards. He bounced off of a linebacker, ran through a linebacker, and then took it the rest of the way for a touchdown. I can see Savion Williams can do those similar things as just a receiver, as an actual wide receiver. So I think this is a guy that you just want to get the ball to and let him be your big body, explosive playmaker. Did he test like, I think some people were disappointed he didn't test like the freak we thought he was, but also he came in at 222. Like he looked big. He looked like a big dude. So 4'4" at 6'4", 222. I'm sorry. If let's cut the crap. If Tetairoa McMillan ran that, we would be like, all right, yeah, he's wide receiver one. He's wide receiver one. Because we had these expectations that he was gonna hit 4.3. Now we kind of poop. No, man, like that's still a really good number for a 6'4", 220 plus pound human being. Yeah, no, listen. He's just gonna be a playmaker at the next level. I think that's the best place to put him. It's just getting the ball to him, figuring out a way to do it.
I agree with DP. That wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listener is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson, and you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Travis Hunter is going to be the topic of tomorrow's show. What does he bring as a cornerback? What are some NFL comps that make sense to us? We're going to talk about all that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.